Okay, so welcome back. I'm going to explain to you what is it that we're trying to do and why we're doing it. So far we've been working using basically the standard hierarchies that we'd expect to have from a human-based skeleton, and we've been rigging on top of that using a sort of a functional approach where we have divided different parts of the rig according to their function. So we have a group with all of our IK stuff, a group with rig parts, a group with the FK controls, and so on and so forth. This, however, poses a particular problem, and it's that the character itself becomes a sort of like a very bound self-contained unit, which is okay if you just want to get a rig done for a character and that's it. However, there's one thing that I want to show you that is totally optional to doing your rigs, but you can do it if you wish, and it's taking our modular approach a step further. And what we're going to do is to divide each part of the character into its own self-contained entity. So in that case, we're going to, for example, separate the arms as if the arm itself was a single rig. And why would we do this? Well, it has certain advantages. The first one is that the character itself becomes not a rig, but a collection of rigs. And this will allow you to eventually, if you wish to do so, build a library of different types of rigs for different body parts. So you could effectively have different types of arms, different types of legs, and then just bring it all together, and the character becomes a super rig that just attaches different rigs together. This also allows you to replace parts of a character with parts from another character. So if you eventually want to replace your human arms with robot arms that have even different proportions, you can easily do so. You just have to replace the arm rig with the new arm rig, attach the new arm rig at the correct locations, reestablish any relationships that were broken, and you're good to go. So that's what we're going to try to do in the next few videos. We're going to reorganize our current rig to fit this more modular design. And then we're going to see how to break up our current rig. We're going to see how to take care of reattaching everything so that nothing flies off or explodes, which is unfortunately easy to do. And finally, how to bring everything together in a totally separate rig. And later on, once we've done chopping up our character and reassembling it, we're going to see how to reattach everything so that the character again becomes a whole and we can animate it as such. So that's what we're going to be up to in the next few videos. So let's carry on. Okay, welcome back, and welcome to a very intense part of the program. This is where things can go haywire. So I'm gonna be as careful as possible about what we're going to do. So as we talked about in the previous video, what we have is, I'm gonna hide the geo and unhide everything else. We've worked so far on a functional type of approach where we've been dividing everything in groups according to their function. So now we have to do that, but for different rig modules. So what we're going to do is going to take care of one of the arms of the character and its clavicle. And then we'll continue with the legs and the spine and everything else. We actually have some parts already all over the place. So let's see what happens once we start picking our character apart. So the first thing we need to do is display everything. We need to have everything displayed. I know we're missing a few things somewhere, so let's see. Let's make sure that we can pretty much see everything. We need to go to our groups and unhide the hidden group. Let's make sure that everything is there. I can see that some joints are not. So let's see where they would be. Here in the main rig. There we go. Let's unhide all this. Perfect. Everything here is displayed. Everything here is displayed. Everything here is displayed. So, okay, we're good. I believe the rest is also same case. Now, as you see, we're dealing with a lot of stuff, so we're going to take this slowly. Let's maximize our viewport. And in order to work easier, I'm going to create a second items list that we're going to use in combination with this one. So let's go into our layout menu, windows, create a new normal window. Let's make this one narrower and also larger. And on the little right arrow icon that you see here, let's click on that and let's say data lists, item list. So we have a new item list, and we're going to be working with both. And that's going to enable us to be a little bit more efficient. All right. So the first thing we want to do is, once everything is visible, we want to be sure we're in setup mode at all times and have compensation on, because we're going to be moving a lot of stuff around, and we want to make sure that nothing moves off its place. Okay. So we don't need the guide rig. We can pretty much do away with it. We do need the main rig and everything else. So let's get started. So if we want to put the entire arm inside of its own rig, the first thing we need is a group that we can use as a parent for all this. And actually this group is later on going to have several subgroups that is going to divide the arm according to different parts of the arm rig. And in this case, we're going to preserve our by function approach. So let's create a group locator. Okay, and we're going to call this group left arm. Okay, and let's set our drop action to match, and let's match it over to our joint over here. So you will see that the group locator takes its orientation and position. And you need to be very careful about how you are matching things as we continue to work. And the reason is you have to remember that everything in the rig always refers to its parent to store its transforms. So the transforms are always evaluated in parent space. And as you can see, some of the nodes already have values on them. For example, if I take this joint, you will see that it's storing certain values. And these values are relative to its parent. So since we're using compensation, usually parenting stuff, especially in the items list, takes care of calculating any transform changes that you need that need to be performed for the object to keep its current position and orientation, but with a new parent. However, for us to minimize the risk and to minimize these transform changes, we want to use parents that have the same space as the objects that we're moving into them. So that's going to help a lot. And also it makes the rig easier to debug, because we know, for example, that the arm parent is going to be located at the root of the arm in terms of visual reference. Okay, so that's why we want to make sure we're matching always to the right elements. Before continuing, I'm going to delete these boxes that we were using while working on the character's torso, but they were meant visually, mostly for visual reference, so we don't need them anymore. Just go ahead and delete them. Okay, now we have our arm group. Okay, so there's several things that we're going to parent under this group, and one of them is going to be the main rig, which is everything you see under not the guide but the main rig. over here. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in here that we need to parent under this group. But for this one, I'm going to create a second group locator. And we're going to call this one a group. And actually, you know what? I'm going to delete it. And if I already have my group arm locator selected when I create it, it's going to be parented under it and matched. Let's see if that's the case. Oh no, it usually does it with the parent, but the group arm locator has no parent at this moment, so we're just going to match it in the same fashion. Let's just drag and drop it over here, and we're going to call this one group left arm main rig. Okay, and we're going to drag and drop it under our arm group. Okay, so now that that's there, what are we going to do with it? We're going to put these joints under it, the upper arm joint and everything under that. So with the upper arm joint selected, all I do is drag and drop it into the main arm rig. Okay, so now that is part of our main rig arm, all the joints. And I'm actually going to color this guy as a light blue too, just to know that it's the main arm rig. Okay, now we have that done, and we can take care of the other elements of the rig. So I don't need the main rig for now. So let's look at our other groups over here. We have a controls FK group that right now only has clavicle elements in it. Then we have the controls IK group that will have some of our IK controls. As you can see, we have the clavicle, arm stuff, and then we have the actual IK rig, which is these two elements only. Okay, well, and we have some other for the other side of the character. So let's take care of these. We can create under our group here another group locator, and we're gonna match it in the same way to this guy, and let's call this one group left, and we're gonna call it IK arm. Okay, and we're gonna parent under it the IK arm of the character, so let's make it part of the arm group. Okay, so let's see, where is the IK arm of our character? If I take this object and move it, there's our IK arm right there. So let's select this locator over here and find it. Here they are. Okay, so we have this rig hand FK parent upper, and this one under it. So we're just gonna take this one, which is the root, and move it over to that group, and now it's part of it. And I'm gonna color this guy red, just because IK stuff, I've been coloring it red. And okay, now we have two groups. Let's see what else we have, and actually I can actually start hiding them just to see what else I'd be missing. So we have the FK controls. Okay, let's see what we have. We only have the clavicle, the upper arm, and the lower arm. So let's create another group locator. And this guy we're going to match, but to the FK arm. Okay, just to make sure that the FK arm again has a parent that exactly matches it. So let's match it there. And we're gonna call this group left. If one was the IK arm, this is FK controls. Let's make it part of the arm group. Okay, and we're going to take our control upper arm and move it into that group. There we go. And let's color this guy. You've been using this yellow for FK. There we go. Cool. Now we can hide this. And we have these IK controls and these objects. Let's see what these are. These are the IK rig, actually. These are part of the IK rig of the character. These are the IK controls, the up vector and the IK arm. And it looks like that's it. We have these other two that belong to the hand. The hand is right now part of the arm. Where is it? In the main rig. So this is something that we will also need to separate later on. But for now I'm going to just leave it there, because we could also make the hand completely independent. But let's see where we are at. Okay, so we were talking about the IK controls. Let's see what we do about those. Let me collapse this so we don't get distracted. So let's find where these guys are. They're here on the IK rig. So here in the IK arm, we have an interesting situation. This is actually not the IK arm. This is actually the hand rig. Let me rename that. So this is going to be our hand IK. Actually, I'm just going to call it hand controls, because it's basically for the controls for the hand. However, if you remember, these controls are using this special hand rig that we have to build. So our hand controls, let's change the color on these to another light blue. And actually gets combined to make this purple color. And so let's create a different group for the arm IK. So let's see where the arm IK is again. It's over here. These are the controls, actually. Okay. This is the actual rig controls, and the others are the actual controls for the IK. So what do we have over here? I just want to make sure I find the actual IK nodes. Okay, let me see. There they are. Here he is. It's in the main rig still. Let's find it. Okay, here we go. So they're already part of a group, fortunately. And right now that group is parented to the clavicle. So we're going to separate it. Let's just make sure nothing moves over here. So compensation is on. Let's go to unparent in place. Perfect. Now we have this group left arm IK. So let's move it under our group arm. There we go. Now we can hide it. And next we have our IK controls. And these other controls, hold on, let me select them, that are part of our arm IK rig. So let's start by grabbing those and unparenting them in place. So they just go down here to the bottom. And let's grab these guys. The control IK arm and this other control, the up vector, and unparent those in place too. And now let's see what we're going to do with them. So here we have our group. One thing that you may run into is the fact that at some point when we start to bring things together again, Modo might complain about dependency loops. So we have to be a little bit careful about how we handle those. So let's take these controls, for example, the hand world space and arm world space. Well, we're using these to control the rotation on the hand. And right now they're under the controls IK, which is a group that has its origin down here. So I'm going to keep that that way. So I'm going to create a group locator. And I'm going to call this guy group L hand hand constraints for now, okay? And I'm going to leave it there, and then I'm going to parent it to the ARM group. So now this guy is going to store transforms because it's not aligned with the ARM group anymore. But now I can take these two and move them over to that group and not have to worry about funky transforms happening on them, especially because there are other parts of the ARM that are dependent on these guys. Okay, now we have that done. Let's hide those. So we only have these controls left and these two, the vectors, the up vectors, and the ARM controls. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test if things still work properly. So let's unhide everything. And let's, for example, move our IK control. Yes, everything still works properly except one thing. If you notice, the clavicle is moving, but our arm is not following it anymore. And that's what I was explaining. Now, since this is totally an independent hierarchy, we have no more control over the arm movement relative to the clavicle. So we need to fix that. Before doing so, I just want to take care of these guys over here, the effectors, the up vectors, which are part of the ARM IK rig, and these are the IK controls. So let's see where this group ARM IK is at. He is over here. So we have the upper ARM IK. Let's see if we can just move them into that group and not break anything. I'm going to move these two into that group. And what do we have? Looks like everything's still fine. Let's try moving our arm. Okay. That's good. And now we can take the controls and move them in. But before I do so, there's something I need to take into consideration. This arm needs to be attached to the clavicle somehow, okay? So we need to take the entire group of the arm and make it somehow a child of the clavicle. However, I can't really do that because, let me show you what happens if I try to do that. I'm gonna grab the group arm control, set my my drop action to parent in place, and I'm gonna drag and drop this onto the clavicle. We get a warning. Modo has detected a dependency loop. Okay, so what that basically means is that our clavicle here depends on an object that is part of this rig that we're trying to attach to it. So you're creating a loop by having the clavicle drive an object that it depends on. because it would be evaluating that dependency here, but then this hierarchy has to be attached to the clavicle, which comes back over here, and then you have that infinite evaluation. So Modo is smart enough to know what things it can, well, not what things, but it's smart enough to figure out when something in the connections you're making is going to create one of these loops, okay? It evaluates it, it detects it, and it says, okay, this is risky. This is going to put the whole scene in a bind. So it undoes that operation, and everything is canceled. So I can't just parent this to the clavicle. I cannot constrain it either, because that's just another type of relationship. So the first thing I need to know is I need to know which object in my hierarchy over here is driving that dependency with a clavicle. So for us to figure that out, let's find our clavicle hierarchy, which is this one over here, everything under the group manual clavicle. And as you can see, there's several objects here that have these plus signs. These plus signs are all the constraints that we've done so far. Okay, so let's see what we have that interacts with the arm. Here we have a direction constraint to the clavicle target, and the clavicle target is part of this construct, so, or something under here that we have not pushed into the arm hierarchy, so that's not it. Then we have a name. Here we have something against the control IK arm. And yeah, let's see where that is. So with that constraint selected, let's right click, select input items, and it's this control over here, but the control is not yet part of the hierarchy, so there must be something else that's going on here. I'm gonna try to circumvent this problem by using a different approach. Okay, I'm going to use a new locator that is going to be the arm attach point. Okay, and under that attach point, we're going to have some of these groups, and those groups are going to move with the hierarchies that we are creating. With the, well, in this case, with the clavicle. This is also going to make it easier for us to exchange arms later on the rig if we want to, because now we have an attach point to attach to. So it's going to be very clear where that is. So let's do that. I'm going to create a new locator, and we're going to call this CNS, because it's going to be constrained to the clavicle. It's going to be CNS arm attach. Oh, left. Arm attach point, or just arm attach. And we're going to match it to the clavicle. So that's the attach point for the arm. And I'm going to give it a different shape. Let's make it into a circle, aligned on X, and we're going to make it smaller, but still noticeable enough. And actually this is an element that I will leave as a solid locator, because we want it to be clear that that's something that is important in the rig later on. And let's offset it over to more or less the location of the arm. There we go. Okay. We're going to move this into the arm group. And the reason is we're not going to constrain the arm group to this object. You're going to see in a second how that's going to work. We're going to place some of these hierarchies under it, and this is the guy we're going to constrain to the clavicle. Okay, so we need to figure out which hierarchies we need that to happen on. And I know, for example, that one I don't want to drive this way is the FK controls. Okay, because the FK controls these guys are supposed to connect to the FK clavicle somehow. So they don't need to be driven by the autoclavicle behavior. So let's take that hierarchy and let's move it up. Still part of the arm group, but I'm just moving it up so it's above my constraint object. So with the constraint object, what do I need inside of that? So I need the hand controls for sure. So let's move those in. And I need the main rig also. So let's move that in. And well, I also need the arm IK. And well, let's move everything in. Actually, it's just the FK arm that is not going to be a part of it. And let's see if now we're allowed to create our constraint. So we're going to take this guy and the clavicle joint, and instead of using our usual constraints, we're going to do dynamic parenting without using the dynamic part of it. I'm just going to use it as a parent constraint. So let's do that, and it seems to have worked. So let's see what happens if we move our IK arm. Now it's connected. Okay. And I still get to rotate this guy, but the FK is not yet connected. So we need to do the same, but with our FK upper arm. Right now, the guy is also not pick walking correctly, because before we didn't have to set that up. It was just part of a hierarchy. So let's set up those two things. Let me select this guy. Let's go to the assembly section, and let's say the pick walk up to the left control for the clavicle. So we need to find that here somewhere. Control left clavicle. There it is. And let's see if it works. Pick walk down. We have the upper. There you go. There we go. So now it's set up correctly. And now what I need to do is do the same thing. Take him, which is part of the FK controls hierarchy, and take this object and do an parent constraint. So now when I dynamic parent, of course, when I rotate my clavicle, my my upper arm rotates with it. So it looks like we've been successful at creating a totally independent arm hierarchy. And now if I hide it, you will see that the arm hierarchy disappears. The only thing that is left is these two controls. So we have an arm IK group over here. So let's create a controls IK group for these two guys. And I need this group to be at the origin so that they can also retain their positions in space that they have right now. So let's create a new group locator. And we're going to call it group left arm IK controls. And this guy, does this guy need to travel with this? Nope. Actually, it has to be outside of the constraint, because otherwise we're going to be having troubles. Remember that the clavicle moves based on the movement of this control. So we cannot make it part of the constraint object. We need to make it part of the arm itself. Okay? And now we can take our two controls, move them in there, and that's it. And let's make this guy rev2. And the hand constraints, we're going to make these guys, let's make them light green. There we go. We have now a functional separated arm rig that still works. in the context of the rest of the system. Let's try, for example, blending between the IK arm and the FK arm. As you can see, the auto clavicle still works. Let's try moving the up vector for the elbow. And let's make sure that they're, yeah, they still have zeroed out transforms. Let's reset this guy's position. Everything seems to work. I'm just going to test the blending very quickly. Let's move the arm up, and let's move this. Okay. I'm going to later create a group for the attach points and probably add labels to them. We're going to do that when we get to creating the UI for the character. And let's bring up the schematic, because right now everything is still being driven by these pass-through nodes. So let's blend down. And this is the other arm, of course. Here's the left side. Okay. There it is. Blends back to the FK arm. And I can take my FK controls, rotate them. Looks like this guy needs to be zeroed because now he has transforms, of course. So let's zero those out. We have something interesting going on here, as you can see. The rotations are not matching. I just want to check the rest. I'm going to take care of that in a second. This guy, he's okay. We're going to take a look at what's going on with him. But for now, oops, not zero. Reset. Rotation. There you go. It looks like everything else is fine. So we just need to take care of that small detail, which we're going to do in the next video. Okay, so we were left at this point where we were checking out what's going on with the rotations of our arm control. As you can see, I'm rotating on its local axis, but this guy's rotating on totally different axes, or a couple at a time. So that's definitely not right. And what's going on is it's this dynamic parent constraint that we set up that is responsible for that behavior. There's a there's a big difference in the space, the reference transform space between our local orientation for this object and the one that is constrained to. So we cannot just use a dynamic constraint like this. We're going to run into these problems. So we're going to do a different setup that is going to work a lot better. So I'm just going to delete that constraint. And you'd say, okay, well, I'm going to try replacing the dynamic constraint with just a position and rotation constraint to our clavicle control. But there's a problem with that, and let me show you what that is. I'm going to do it just so you can see what's going to happen. So I'm going to select both and say position constraint and rotation. And let's try rotating our clavicle. Well, there's not much going on over there. Our arm is rotating, but it's not moving to follow the clavicle. Well, remember that the clavicle control, it's actually just a locator here at this location. And this location is not moving. So we need a location that is actually at the end of the clavicle for us to be able to do that. So I'm going to select these two constraints again, delete them, and we're going to set something up that is going to enable us to do exactly that. So the first thing I need is I'm going to need a locator. And we're going to match this locator to our clavicle. So it takes its position and orientation, but I need it to be at the end of the clavicle. So now I'm going to match its position to our FK control. Okay, so it's going to be here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a child of this control. Okay, so I'm going to select both and parent in place. All right, so now we have this locator, which is going to be our constraint target. So let's go find it over here, and we're going to call him locator L clavicle attach end. Okay, and actually I could go ahead and make it into a nicer looking object so that I can know that this is an important attach point. So I'm gonna make it into a sphere, and it's also going to be solid. Okay, and just to make it clear that it's part of the clavicle rig, let's color it accordingly. Let's make this the fill color is going to be this light bluish, and the wireframe is going to be the same color but darker. Okay, so now we have this object here that we can constrain onto. All right, so now you would say, well, I can take my object now and constrain it directly. I'm not going to do that. And the reason is, since this is a control that the animator is going to be working with, I really want to make sure that he has nothing else on him except keyable channels. I don't want driven channels at all in there. So instead of constraining him directly, what I'm going to do is create a parent for him that is going to be then constrained to this object. Okay, so who is this? I just want to make sure. Okay, this is not part of the of this hierarchy. Okay, I was just distracted by that object. So let's create another locator. Okay, and now I'm going to set the drop action to insert. So when I drag and drop it onto the FK control, it's just going to become its parent, as you can see. And we're going to call these CNS for constraint left FK arm attach. Okay, and let's also make it a little bit easier to spot. So in this case, I'm going to leave him as a box. Just going to also make him smaller. I think I might. Where is he? Yeah, he's at the origin. Okay, hold on a second. I should have done an insert at parent. Well, it should have worked. We'll see. It took the transforms, I think, from the group. So let's just move the control over there, and let's just take this guy and match it to over there. That's good. Okay, and now we can take the control, make it a child of that. And now we can take him and constrain him onto our sphere over there. Okay, so let's see if we can just use a dynamic parent constraint and be done with that. Okay, so now if I take my clavicle and rotate it, rotates fine. Let's see the upper arm, rotates fine. So it looks like we have that part sorted out already. And yep, everything's okay. The last thing I'm going to do is just give my cube also the same colors to know that they are related, him and the sphere. Let's just return this to its original pose. Let's grab him and oops, sorry, display 3D items, and let's make him into a different color also, and this guy same thing. Okay, so we're done with the arm for the character. That leaves us with a nicely fully functioning arm rig that we can use to move around different characters. Of course, the person rigging all this still has to know where things need to be constrained and attached and everything. But otherwise, we're doing good so far. So now we can take this group, the entire thing, and move it under our character A's asset control over here. So let's take him, move over there, and we're done. That's it. So you can go ahead and repeat exactly the same procedure on the other arm. Just make sure that you end up with the same groups and the same elements inside of each group. Okay, so we have all this, and that you constrain things properly, and you should be good to go. And in the next video, we're going to do the same to a different part of our character. So see you over there.